Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
Hello and welcome to the Women Today podcast. This week we discovered how you can give it all away to live a fuller, richer life. We heard what it's like to take children out of school to give them a global life experience. I got a little bit excited about Beth interviewing a cartoon vampire from my favourite TV show, Adventure Time. And we went down on the farm with the Andersons. But first, next week is Inspiring Women Week, and we heard from Ramsey Grammar School head teacher Annette Baker about the range of events designed to encourage young women to feel they aren't just restricted to typically female roles in the workplace.
Unbelievably, in 2016, there's still an issue with stereotyping amongst girls and boys, sort of girls being put off going for certain careers because they think it's just for basically boys to do, and boys likewise thinking that, that's a bit odd, a girl considering a career in that particular area because that's traditionally where, men have chosen to work. So lots of work to be done there, and on the back of the Inspiring the Future initiative, Inspiring Women initiative seeks to capitalise on the success of Inspiring the Future and bring a lot more information about the jobs available to young women.
It's crazy really, isn't it? Because you really would have thought in today's age that was not an issue anymore.
Unbelievably it is. In the creative arts, for example, I was really surprised to find out, even somewhere where you'd think things would be a little bit more even, there's a predominance of males as to females employed in that area, as well as the traditional areas of engineering and technology where girls traditionally in the past haven't automatically gravitated towards. There's still a job of work to be done there, and that's why we've become engaged in this initiative and why we're hoping for such traction out there in terms of mobilising girls' thoughts towards considering something they wouldn't normally consider.
So you've got a number of events happening throughout next week. Just give us an idea of some of the speakers you have coming over.
Well, it actually kicks off with a football game. The Isle of Man women's team against the under-21s with a guest appearance by Jenna Deere, who's a professional footballer, plays for Everton, I'm pleased to say, and she also plays for England. So she just signed for Everton, I believe, and she's going to come over to the island and is going to speak to groups of young girls and the teams actually involved in this game as well. So that's going to kick us off, if you pardon the pun, on Monday at Castle Rushen at 6:15.
So can anybody go to the match on Monday?
Yes, anybody can go. It's completely free, and it's at 6:15 at Castle Rushen High School. So anybody's interested in football, basically, get yourselves down there. So Wednesday, we are having a speed date here at Ramsey Grammar School where we're very pleased to have quite a lot of the speakers from the Diversity Conference who are joining us, as well as Madam President Claire Christian, who's going to open the event for us. Very pleased that Madam President is able to come along to this again. Nick Chambers from the Education and Employers Task Force will also be there. And we've got a really wide and diverse range of participants in the speed date. And amongst those, we'll be having Dr. Fiona Bartels-Ellis, the Global Head of Equality and Opportunity and Diversity at the British Council, Miranda Whalen, Diversity and Inclusion Manager at ITV, and we've also got Heather Melville, Director of Strategic Partnerships at RBS, Diana Warman, Public Policy Advisor for Diversity at the CIPD, and Karen Bellion, Founding and Managing Director of Liverpool-based training and development company Athela. Helen Butters, she was one of the all-women team that recently rowed the Atlantic in the Talisker Whisky Atlantic Challenge, and she's speaking to students at Ballacameen on Tuesday the 22nd of March. So a really wide and diverse and high-profile range of speakers, really, who we're really looking forward to working with our Year 9s. Another traditionally male-orientated area are the armed forces, and we've got the Navy coming up, and also British Petroleum are going to be doing a talk in our school. The oil rigs and all that kind of thing is traditionally something which girls wouldn't consider or would associate with British Petroleum, but they wouldn't necessarily be aware of the range of career options available with that company. And we hope that all of these events will encourage girls to consider really the full range of career options open to them, and will give them the inspiration and the aspiration, if they haven't already got it, to pursue careers in areas that traditionally they might have thought weren't open. to them.
You're listening to Women Today on Manx Radio 20 to 3. We're also talking this afternoon about the services available on the island for people with hearing issues, and our guests in the studio are the head of the island's audiology services, Stephen Griffiths, and the Children's Hearing Clinic lead audiologist, Fiona Kelly. Glad I didn't struggle with the word audiologist again there. Now, Stephen, we were talking about the advances that have been made with regard to technology in dealing with people, older people who've got hearing problems. So how has that changed? There is that stereotypical image of the really massive hearing aid that nobody wants.
Yes, and if you go back maybe 10 years, we had the big beige behind the ear type hearing aids that everyone typically thinks of. Nowadays we have more up-to-date digital, fully digital hearing aids that use very fine tubes into the ear that you really can't see. So from a cosmetic perspective, they're much more acceptable nowadays than they used to be. But we also think that attitudes towards hearing aids and hearing loss has changed as well, so people are more accepting of them.
So we know that hearing issues do go along with the ageing process, but at what point should someone seek out help?
Well, at any stage really that they think they have a problem, so if they're struggling to hear family members, if they're struggling in background noise or struggling to hear the TV, having to turn it up, which is annoying their partner, then that's the time to get in touch with us. We can assess what's going on and provide the help that's needed.
And how can people do? Is it always something that needs to be done through a doctor, that referral process?
Well, historically and at the moment, yes, that is the case. If anyone wants to come through audiology at Nobles, they have to go through the GP or the practice nurse to do that. However, at the moment we are developing a self-referral process for patients wanting to come through to Nobles, which we are implementing from the 1st of April, which will allow anyone over the age of 50 with usual age-related hearing loss to refer themselves, so they won't need to go by the GP anymore. And that's something we're quite excited about at the moment. So
that's going to make a huge difference for people who maybe just don't want to have to go through the whole long waiting process. What is a typical waiting time for people in audiology?
From the point of referral at the moment to being seen is about 8 weeks.
Okay, so Fiona, you deal with the children side of things, and we've heard again that we have those newborn hearing tests which hopefully will pick up any issues. What are the most likely causes of any hearing issues in young people?
The majority of hearing problems in younger children are associated with the middle part of the ear with inflammation and congestion, often associated with coughs and colds. It's a condition called glue ear, which is a build-up of fluid behind the eardrum, which causes a mechanical blockage and causes a mild, moderate hearing loss. This is extremely common in young children. It tends to peak between the ages of about 2 and 4, coincidentally, with the beginning of nursery attendance usually, and then again perhaps with school, exposure to new bugs. It's really common. As I say, up to 90% of children will at any one time have a problem with their hearing, and it can cause a variety of symptoms. Often with glue ear there are no symptoms other than the mild hearing loss. There's no pain, there's no fever. So parents are often unaware that there's a problem, perhaps until something's mentioned at school or nursery.
It must be very difficult, as I suppose with any sort of GP practice, it must be very difficult to deal with toddlers and babies, especially when you're trying to sort of get into their ears and see what's going on. How do you sort of keep them distracted, or how do you deal with that?
It can be difficult. We are used to it. We usually have 2 members of staff at least in the clinic, and we try to make it fun for the children. We try to have testing as play-based. We're not afraid to get down on the floor and get the bricks and the Lego out and play games. And with younger children, toddlers and babies, we have a system of tests where we condition them, if you like, that whenever a noise comes on, something exciting happens, usually a toy lights up in a box or something like that. So we sort of condition them that every time that happens, something good happens, and they'll start to look for the sound themselves. So it's largely play-based with children, but we do have a lot of objective tests and things we can do, things we pop in their ears, as long as they'll let us, which they won't always.
Have you ever had the experience? I remember seeing a video, there's a few of them now, of babies that have been profoundly deaf, and the experience is captured on video of them having their hearing aids switched on, and the face is it's so moving. Have you ever had that?
It is. It can be amazing. It doesn't always happen like that. Some babies, you will switch their hearing aids on the first time and they will scream. Some will be quiet, but yeah, I have seen it, and it is lovely. Brings a tear to the eye of the parents. Babies will usually the eyes widen, they look around, they can't believe achieve it. And it is a wonderful feeling for the parents and for the staff involved in it as well. It's great, it's very rewarding.
Because hearing issues, if they are left untreated, I guess, in young people, can lead to other problems, especially, I think, with speech development.
Yes, speech and language develop. It's really important. As say, we test all babies, or we offer all babies a hearing test within the first few weeks. It's really important. There's often no indication that there'll be a hearing issue. You can't tell when baby's born, but the sooner that there is a problem, if it's discovered, the sooner it's treated or dealt with, that they've got the best chance of developing normal communication and language and speech. So it's really important to get treatment, seek treatment early.
What should parents look out for? Because obviously if they're so young that they're not actually communicating yet, what are sort of good things to look out for that might suggest an issue?
Well, but babies not reacting, small children not reacting to sounds, being perhaps very quiet themselves, not reacting to the doorbell, things being dropped. Slightly older children, perhaps a delay in their language. They can also suffer behavioural problems because of frustration, not being able to hear. They can suffer tiredness, straining to hear. They can be very tired, easily tired and upset. And so there's quite a few things you can look out for.
One of the things we were talking about before, Stephen, before you came in, was the difference between audiology departments over here and in the UK. And you were saying that we're quite fortunate in a way because we're not necessarily bound by some of the same regulations as the UK.
Yeah, we do follow the same model of delivery of care, if you like, as our colleagues in the UK. But because we're not part of the NHS as such, we're able to adapt those policies to fit the Manx public better. And as some listeners may have seen recently in the press, there has been cases in the UK at the moment of hearing aid services being rationed and some people not getting hearing aids, which is fortunately something we don't have to worry about over here.
What sort of things then can we be doing to protect our hearing and really keep our ears going for as long as possible? Keep our ears going? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Depends how fast they are.
Well, the first thing I would say is keep the cotton buds out.
Oh,
We
yes.
had a question about that, actually. Yeah. What's the deal then, Stephen?
Don't use them, full stop.
But
So-
what if you've got stuff in your ear?
Well, what we recommend is if you feel that you might have wax in the ears, then just to apply a couple of drops of olive oil and have them checked. So we can take the wax out using more appropriate methods. The problem with cotton buds is you never quite know how far you're going in. In a lot of cases, you're actually pushing the wax further in, so you end up with more of a blockage. And then there's the risk of going through the eardrum, of course, which brings with it infection and discomfort.
Well, I have to admit, I had an ear infection as a kid, and it's one of the most horrendously painful things, isn't it? It's surprising how
Acute ear
painful it is.
infection is very, very painful.
Yeah,
Yes.
awful. I've got a question for you actually, because I do a bit of musician, and it's one of those things, isn't it, that we do sort of wreck our ears by standing in front of drum kits and speakers being very loud. And there was actually a very high profile case in the news last week of Brian Johnson, the singer from AC/DC. He was told to stop touring immediately. So literally, do not go to your next gig or you will be deaf, profoundly deaf. You're going to ruin your hearing. How can you protect your hearing? Because I know there are sort of little sort of dampeners and things out there, but do they actually work?
Oh yes, and you can actually get quite a range of very specialised earplugs, custom-made earplugs that have specific filtering systems in them for musicians. So, for example, if you've got a drummer, they could invest in some plugs that have filters to allow specific drum sounds through, but dampen them to safe
And
levels.
maybe put it on the drums too. They're all too loud.
Yeah, so there's certainly solutions available for people to protect themselves, but it's ultimately up to the individual to make that choice.
Adventure time! Come on, grab your friends. We'll go to very distant lands.
Adventure Time is about a boy and his dog, Finn and Jake. I play a character named Marceline, so she's getting an 8-part mini-series called Stakes, and it kind of dives into her background and her really kind of mysterious past of sort of how she became a vampire.
Oh, woof. Marceline wanna go night-night.
Don't go night-night, Marcy. I'm worried.
For real? Why?
Nobody on record has ever cured vampirism, unless you count killing vampires as curing. In that case, you've cured tons, right?
Tons is an understatement.
And she's 1,000 years old, and she's half demon, half vampire. So you kind of are going to be learning about how that came to be.
I just wonder how difficult it is just giving your voice to a character rather than physically playing a role. What challenges does that pose?
Yeah, I mean, when I first got into animation, I thought, oh, it's going to be easier because you just have to go in and read these lines and you don't have to worry about your facial expressions or anything like that. But it's really a difficult task. And I mean, luckily I've been this character for so many years that it's become more natural, but you really have to throw your whole body into it, and it's a difficult thing to have to portray every emotion with just your voice.
I know how to get through this door. We're gonna lay down a chill jam. Hey! Yeah! Just keep it cool.
Let's see if you hacks can keep up with my raw talent.
La da 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 da. I'm gonna bury you in the ground.
I suppose it's slightly different insofar as you may be not recognised in the street as much for being that person.
It's lovely. I like going to, events and stuff where people kind of know who you are, but then in day-to-day life, I'm just normal.
You don't like that? Or do you just not like me? Sorry, I don't treat you like a goddess. Is that what you want me to do?
Because you are the little girl from Love Actually who did belt out that song, All I Want for Christmas. Do people let you forget that? Have you been able to move on from that moment?
No. But I mean, it's great. Being a part of such a classic movie that's still loved and relevant is amazing. Not many people can say that.
So this is an animation series. It
Yes.
is aimed at children, but adults love it as well.
Yeah.
Why is that, do you think?
It's just such a funny show. The writing is really clever. There's a lot of smart humor to it, and I think it's really great because, parents and kids watch it together and they both find it just as equally funny.
Baking pancakes, making bacon pancakes. Take some bacon and I'll put it in a pancake. Bacon pancakes, that's what it's gonna make. Bacon pancake.
Very often with animated works, there are the little jokes in there for the adults, which hopefully a lot of the time go over children's head. To what extent does that happen in this series?
I'd say quite a bit. It's such a lighthearted show, so everything is all in good fun, but there's definitely those jokes in there that are aimed towards the parents to make it nice for them to be able to watch as well.
Schmowtown, dude. That guy's gonna dingle our bones into tapioca pudding.
Tell us a little bit more about Imagination Studios, because that launched last summer and it really is described as an online destination for children to learn about what goes into making animation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really cool website, It's really there to teach kids about how these shows come about, what it's like to be an animator, and, kind of gives them a little behind the scenes look into how their favorite shows are made.
And how much do you know about the process and how long it takes?
It takes a long time to animate things. We record once a week as a voice actor, but I think one episode probably takes about 3 months in total from start to finish.
And is it a series that you can watch yourself? Sometimes when you look back at actual film footage of yourself, sometimes it can be quite difficult. But can you watch this series and not think, oh, I should have said that in a slightly different way?
I do find myself kind of criticizing episodes that I might be in, but I'm a huge fan of the show myself. I crack up when I watch it. And when the Marceline episodes come on, though, I'm kind of like, kind of nitpicking at my acting chops a little bit, but I think that's only natural for any artist.
And you've actually written the theme tune.
I did not write the theme, but I had the chance to kind of do my own rendition of it for Stakes, which was really cool. Marceline got to put her own spin on it. Adventure time, come on, grab your friends. We're going to a very distant land. That's just a little.
Well, brilliant. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. Just tell us where people can watch this show.
Sure, yeah. Stakes airs Monday, the 14th of March at 5 p.m. on Cartoon Network.
Living so merrily.
Just before the break, we were talking with our studio guest, Catherine Hodgson, about what it was like to go and live in a completely different environment for just around 2 months. I just wonder, we've talked a little bit about what your children gained from that, but what about the local community there? I'm intrigued as to why you chose that place.
Well, the place we stayed, the lady who owns the place is a social worker from London, and she's set it up. It's called La Mariposa, and basically everything she makes goes back into the community. I mean, it was so poor. The people all around were just living in mud huts, but they were so beautiful people. It was just so amazing. And for my children to go out and go to the schools, which are just huts, and see, we took out pencils and things for them, and for them to see how other children don't have what we have, again, was part of the education for me, because I don't think our children realise how lucky they are these days.
As we may have mentioned on the show in the past, we are pretty proud of the fact that the Isle of Man was the first country in the world to give women the vote in national elections, 37 years before that opportunity was given first to the women in the UK, in fact. Now, somewhat surprisingly, perhaps, over 100 years later, there is only one female representative in the House of Keys out of 24 members. And when Catherine Nichols spoke with Minister John Shimmin about his decision to leave politics, this was one of the points he raised when she asked him about diversity and equality in government.
I think you've touched on one of the most problematic areas I see for the House of Keys, and it's not to do with age, it's to do with the gender mix. I've been quite disappointed that since, indeed throughout the last House and all the time I've been in politics, there's been such an unequal division between males and females. When Mrs. Cannell retired, that meant that the House of Keys had 1 out of 24 females. You then go to Tynwald, and with the President, you then have 2 females. And that is outrageously inequality for the public of the Isle of Man to actually feel as if you've got a balance to represent the views. So I would say that in the House of Keys, we should be hoping to get far more women standing as candidates. I would love to see at least 6 female candidates elected. I think we need to get to that sort of number to actually try and get some representation that is appropriate, and would obviously say to people that if you are considering standing for the House of Keys election in September, if you feel I've got anything to contribute, particularly to women candidates, to explain the job, I would be more than happy to use my time left to assist people considering why they should stand, what the job entails, and if I have anything to offer, I'm happy to do so.
Babs, if you were to try and sum up minimalism in a sentence, what would you say?
I think it's about living with less stuff.
Yeah. How much do you have to give away in order to class yourself as a minimalist?
Well, I think if you read the blog, and these guys are they're supposed to kind of like experts on minimalism, it's different for everybody. But I think to be, if you say I'm going to be a complete and utter minimalist, 90% of your stuff, I would say, is a good, a yardstick. But you don't have, it's not, I must make this point, it's not about giving the stuff or, jettisoning stuff and getting rid of stuff. That is not the point. That's not the focus. The focus is creating room for more stuff, but the stuff that's important, or so more time, more freedom, more money, because you're not consuming, you're not sort of buying every latest gadget that we are sort of pushed upon to buy. So by all means, if you want to be a complete and utter, get rid of all of your stuff and go and live in a cabin in the woods. But if you just want to kind of embrace some of the minimalist lifestyle, then just maybe try the 30-day challenge, which the minimalists talk about on their blog. And basically for 30 days, get together with a partner who's willing to do it. So on the first day, you get rid of 1 item. On the second day, you get rid of 2 items, and so on and so on.
Can I just stop you there and ask you, can you remember what your first item was that you got rid of?
I can't, because I took a kind of a blitz attitude to it. And the minimalists, they took 2 different tacks. One of them did the whole kind of like, right, I'm just going to get rid of everything. And the other guy packed everything up in boxes, and then 3 weeks later decided what he'd missed and took only those items out of the boxes.
That's a really good idea. I'd quite like to do that.
You can understand that. It freaks me out to think about getting rid of things. I mean, if you should see my house, my wardrobe in itself,
Mine was the same.
Oh my goodness. I just is there anything that you regret throwing away?
Yes, but it wasn't in this. I'd sold or got rid of all my vinyl. But this wasn't in this minimalist, that was like 5 years ago. And that's the only thing I ever regret, but only because my daughter's like, where's all your vinyl? But from, this last year when I started throwing things out, there is not one single thing that I have missed. And I thought it would be so difficult because I was I was one of those just-ins. Just in case, I'll keep that, just in case. I had a collection of vintage clothes because I had a vintage website at one point, and that was really difficult, getting rid of a lot of that. And I had hats. Oh, my Lord, I had so many hats, vintage hats, shoes, handbags, books. Books was very, very difficult for myself and for my daughter. We took, I think it was 10 or 11 crates of books to the amenity centre.
It's interesting that, isn't it? Because books are a lovely thing to have, and I think when you have them sort of on bookshelves, same with vinyl, you do feel like when people come round, it's almost like a representation of who you are, isn't it? But then how often do you go back and reread a book, I suppose?
And what about all those herbs and spices that you've got in the cupboard? The ones that are in date. I just think of my kitchen cupboards. It's not just actually books and vinyl and clothing, but also your food cupboards as well.
Food cupboards, I think we all hoard in our food cupboards, don't we? Yeah. And I really like to cook, so I do actually, I do keep herbs and spices in, and but again, it's kind of like I think nobody's saying you must get rid of everything. Just have a look at your life, sort of, have a measure up and see, do I really, really need that in my life? Is it taking up space? Is it just creating clutter? And maybe put it in a box. That's probably, if you're a little bit wary, I think the sort of putting things in boxes is a really good idea. I cheated a little bit, and I have got a couple of boxes in my mum's loft, which she loves to remind me about now and again. But I thought, okay, I'm really struggling with this choice, for example, particularly personal items, maybe photographs or, just little things that remind you of a certain event. So I thought, right, put it in a box. If I haven't missed it, it's going to go. It's going to go in the summer. And I've marked in my calendar different dates to sort of like, right, okay, go and open this box, have a look in. Do you need it? No. Have you missed it? No. Right. Give it away, sell it, donate it, whatever. It really it does get easier, I promise you. And as I say, nobody's saying, oh, you must get rid of all your stuff. Just think about it. And the freedom that comes with having less clutter, it's addictive.
So is it sort of a psychological thing then?
Definitely, without a doubt. It's psychologically very freeing. And I had a lot of clutter. I really did. And so that feeling of letting go and not having to kind of find places for stuff. And
what about shopping trips? I'm not being funny. Yep. I get a real buzz from going out, like say, for instance, to a shop in town that's quite well known for needing a bit of time to rummage through and get a bargain, okay? And I really enjoy it when I do get things, and I get like enjoyment out of maybe purchasing a new few things. How often do you say that you go shopping these days?
Well, I was never a huge shopper, sort of high street shopper anyway. I've always been a huge fan of charity shopping. I just love it. I think there's so many benefits to it. Okay, one, you're not sort of adding to landfill because you're sort of rescuing something from landfill. Two, you're helping the charity out by buying something. And three, you're getting something unique and probably not sort of going to bump into somebody.
And quite
often
often they can be designer things, can't they, that you find in charity shops.
Absolutely.
That, someone who is maybe slightly better off than I would be has cleared out their closet. And especially on the Isle of Man, in some of the sort of charity shops, you find amazing items.
I know my mum used to love going over to London and going to places like Chelsea and going to the charity shops, because you're right, you used to get really good bargains. But I think you have to be of that mentality.
Yeah.
In the first place, it does maybe make it slightly easier if you are of the mentality where you can go and get things and you're quite happy to recycle as well.
Yes. Yeah, I think you do have to. But, again, it's sort of small steps, and and I keep emphasising this. It's not for everybody, and nobody's pointing a finger and say, oh, you must all be minimalists. But, I think maybe people should sort of question. And interesting that you say you get a buzz out of, shopping. A lot of women do. But I think if you read, a lot of research will say, actually, you will get a buzz, but it's very
short-lived.
It's very short-lived.
Very.
And actually, when you get home and maybe you've worn the item once, are you still getting a buzz from it?
Absolutely, yeah, no, I totally agree.
Something I found was interesting when I was looking at the Minimalist website. They were talking about computers and smartphones and saying that actually, and I wouldn't have thought about this, of course, having a computer or a smartphone will remove a lot of the stuff that you would normally have, because you don't necessarily need CDs or your vinyl anymore, DVDs because you can have movies on there, paper files, photo albums, calendars, calculator, books, phone books, notebooks, newspapers. All of it can be in that often smartphone, tiny little thing. So with the advent of technology, which almost seems sort of contradictory in a way,
that's right.
it actually helps the minimalistic cause in a way.
Well, I think probably people just get the wrong impression of minimalism. You know, they imagine this sort of like stark Swedish house with nothing in it, and it's, you know, if you're focusing on the stuff, then you're kind of missing the point. That the whole point of minimalism is to create more time, more freedom, more money, and it can mean different things to different people. So my version of minimalism will be different to perhaps, you know, the 20-year-old guy living in the suburbs in New York. All very different.
I've just been told that I might be delivering a lamb shortly. I'm slightly nervous about that. I know. I'm here with Fiona. Hi, Fiona.
Hi.
What a beautiful day to be up here, and what a beautiful location you live in.
We're very fortunate, aren't we? It's lovely. Actually, after this winter, it is so lovely to see the sun out.
Oh, it must have been very difficult for you with the amount of rainfall.
It's been a terrible, ghastly winter. I think it's the worst one. We've been back in the island 10 years. It's been the worst one, certainly, since we've been back. We try and keep the animals on as few fields as possible and on well-drained fields as much as possible. Especially now with lambing time coming up, you need lots of grass growing for our little sheep with all their new lambs. So, yeah, it's been tricky.
So how many breeding ewes do you have?
So now we've got about 200 breeding ewes, plus a few rare breed odds and ends.
I can hear the noise of lambs.
I'll sit with Rachel.
Oh, bless them. So, John, we have stumbled across a number of lambs here. They are so cute. What age are these?
So these were all born within the last week. Some of them were born about 2 or 3 days ago. I've kept them indoors for a couple of days. Although the weather's perfect, really. It's just to check them, making sure they're drinking and getting strong enough. And then they've been turned out, most of them today, some yesterday. And in this field, we've just got twins. It's a very fine line between life and death with lambing. It's a real tearjerker sometimes, but
for the lambing season in particular, if it's rough weather, it must be so difficult to deal with.
Well, the supreme example, I suppose, was 3 years ago when it snowed, and particularly on the west coast of the island, we were really hit very heavily by that, and that it went on for 3 weeks plus, and that was exceptional. So that was really hard, and thankfully lots of friends and neighbours came and helped us out. But we don't really want a repetition of that in my lifetime, hopefully anyway. We're trying to get a local market, so your meat really is local, and you know exactly which fields they've been in, never mind the fact that it's only a few miles away from you. So that's, you're sort of diversifying all the time and learning as we go along, really.
It's not just sheep you have here. You have a big variety of animals and, by the looks of things, activities. But what other animals do you have around?
Well, we have ponies. That was sort of initiated with Fiona, and the girls love ponies, and so we had to, when we came back from Sheffield on the farm and we got land, you've got to have ponies. But also we've in the last couple of years started with pigs, and so we've got 2 sows and always have litters of pigs, and they're really entertaining. I'd never kept pigs before.
Are they as intelligent as everyone says?
They are quite intelligent, and they're very good at escaping, so they can always think of ways of getting out. And then we've got goats, golden Guernsey goats, and we're increasingly trying to get rarer breeds so that when people come to stay here, because we do accommodation as well, or birthday parties, they can see different type of variety of animals rather than have 500 of the same type of sheep.
Fiona, farming is obviously a very difficult life. You know, it's quite hard, isn't it? You've got to put in an awful lot of hours, and you can't really guarantee what sort of return you're going to get, so I presume. So is that one of the reasons why you've sort of diversified with all these different things on the farm?
Yeah, it is, I think. It's very difficult to get a good price for your produce on farming, and so if you diversify into tourism, people are much more happy to pay for accommodation than they are for good quality meat, which is a shame. But that's what we're hoping to try and change, what we're doing here. Teach people a bit more about the value of local produce, and then hopefully we'll change people's attitude. We've just started raising some veal calves, just to raise the profile of that, because people just don't know the fact that dairy bull calves don't get a life because people won't buy veal. And so we've started to raise veal calves, so when people come to the farm to see that, then they'll see that actually it's good to buy veal rather than the bad press that veal's had over the last 20 or 30 years. Hopefully we'll reverse that trend a little bit, even in just in this little corner of the Isle of Man. This is Billy.
Hello, Billy.
Jacko. This is Jacko. The black one's Jacko and the brown one's Billy.
Oh, gorgeous. What do we have here, John?
This sheep was scanned to have triplets in January, and then last night I brought her in, and then by 10 o'clock she delivered a stillborn. I obviously had to try and help the other two. The other two came out, and they were both alive, although the third one was touch and go whether it would survive. So I had to really invest quite a lot of time, really, and eventually it could turn out. It doesn't always turn out that way.
Go on, go back on the veil. Thanks for listening to our best bits of the week. If you missed any of last week's programmes and would like to hear them in full, you can listen on demand at manxradio.com for 7 days after the broadcast. And you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at MR Women Today.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com. Love being Shaw. Terms and conditions apply.